So the 2024 Contender Series season has now come to an end, and I wanted to do a full season recap talking about every single fight that happened, every single contract that was given out, and also matching up every single fighter who got a contract with who I think that they should fight next in the UFC. Now, of course, a lot of fights have been announced already, but I'll talk about those as well. I was doing weekly recaps, but it did get to the point where I wasn't actually able to make a recap video as soon as the fight finished, so I didn't really want to do recap videos for each week but a day late or 2 days late in some cases, so I just decided that I was going to recap the whole season in one video. I'm going to try and avoid making this like a 40-minute video because I do still have 50 fights to talk about, so I'm gonna try and be as fast as I can. The first fight that the first main event of week number 1 was Mansour Abdulmalik. He defeated Wes Schultz using wrestling. It was a bit of a war in the wrestling, but Mansour Abdulmalik was landing really good ground and pound throughout and finished the fight over a gassed out Wes Schultz by ground and pound. And he actually does have a fight booked already. He's taken on Dusko Todorovic in what is a matchup that he probably will win. I'm going to pick him to win anyways. Rami Hamed defeated my GOAT, Ming Ding. Very, very sad. Very, very sad. It wasn't a good fight. Rani Hamid was kind of just running away, but Ming Ding wasn't really skilled enough to close the distance. The fight was terrible. Bruno Lopez defeated Mikhail Saziniani. He was at one point a very hyped up prospect, but I will be honest with you guys, I am not that high on Lopez anymore. I didn't think he looked very good in this fight. He didn't look very good in his LFA fight after his Contender Series loss to Brenson Ribeiro last year. I do have him actually making his debut against Ivan Arslan, who's 0-1 in the UFC. He did actually just lose that pretty close fight to Ion Kutalaba very, very recently. I think that would make sense. It would be a tough fight for both guys, and it would kind of tell us, is Bruno Lopez or Ivan Arslan any good? Jose Delgado defeated Ernie Juarez. He looked good on the feet, looked like a pretty big featherweight in there. Ernie Juarez wasn't really able to get anything going on the striking and the wrestling. I think that just Delgado versus Timmy Kawamba would be a banger. I think it would be great. It would really test how good Delgado is. And they're both pretty similar prospects. Now, I know it would be quite sad to see Timmy Kawamba go 0-3 and get cut in the UFC because I do think that he is skilled, but it is what it is. Kawamba's still pretty young. I think he would come back even if he was to lose in Delgado's UFC debut. I like Delgado as a prospect. I think he looked pretty good in this fight, and I think he took it on short notice too, and he looked good. Lorna Kevner probably had one of the standout performances of the season in the first fight of the season when he defeated Antoine Ho. I wasn't super confident in Lorna Kevner beating Antoine Ho, and I thought he was going to do it in a decision in a war. And he looked really good, and he's got his debut already booked. He's now going to be fighting against someone else making their debut from Shooter Box in Jose Ochoa, who is a striker with a lot of power. But I do think that Kavanagh is just a little bit better, and I probably will pick Kavanagh, even though I do need to look into Ochoa just a little bit more. Now, week number 2 for Contender Series was pretty good as well. Andreas Gustafsson defeated Pat Pitlick. I was very low confidence in Gustafsson, but man, this guy just comes forward like an absolute maniac, and he wants to go to war at all times. Now, he's actually booked now against Preston Parsons as an official debut. I mean, it's probably a good matchup for Gustafsson. I think if you wanted violence, you could have gone with someone like Billy Goff, but Gustafsson versus Parsons should still be a pretty fun fight. Now, Rizvan Kuniev defeated Hugo Kanha. Hugo Kanha is actually a pretty good heavyweight, even though Kuniev looked pretty good in there. Kuniev's good. This guy beat Renan Ferreira, who was fighting Francis Ngannou this weekend at the time that I record this. I mean, he did beat him, but then, you know, he's just a bit of a naughty boy. Just a bit of a naughty boy. But aside from that naughtiness, he is very good. And I actually think he should debut against Martin Boudet, who was like a borderline ranked guy at heavyweight. I think Kuniev is the real deal, even though he's definitely not on the sauce anymore. He's not in as good shape as he looked against Ferreira. He's still the real deal. Cortavius Romeos defeated Michael Imperato. It wasn't the greatest fight either from both guys, I don't think, but Romeos was landing the better shots on the feet. He is actually booked against Gaston Bolaños. Romios needs to wrestle against Bolaños. I wasn't that impressed by the striking of Romios. Imperato was able to land some pretty good shots there. And we know that Gaston Bolaños can strike. So that's a pretty tough debut for Romios. I know Dana White was super high on him. It is what it is. Torres Finney defeated Cam Roston. I did talk about that fight when I talked about Torres Finney for the second time, so I won't go into it too much, but Finney won using wrestling. Cody Haddon defeated Billy Brand. Such a good performance. I mean, Billy Brand is a tough guy. A lot of people were picking Brand to win as well. And Cody Haddon won in the first round by sub, and then he just went out there and defeated Dan Aguirre. There is going to be officially now a UFC event, I believe, very early February in Australia, I should say. I would like to see him fight Kyung Ho Kang in that one there. I believe Kyung Ho Kang now has 30 professional fights. He would be like a real test, like, of a veteran for someone like Haddon. And I feel like a guy like Kyung Ho Kang is, if you can beat Kyung Ho Kang, you're a legitimate prospect. But if you lose to Kyung Ho Kang, it's not really the end of the world. But if you can beat Kang, that's when we start talking about you as like the next level. Now we have Contender Series Week 3. Andrei Pulyev won the main event against Liam Anderson. Made me look like a right idiot, I'll be honest with you guys. I have him debuting against Cedric Dumas. That's what I think that they should do. Pulyev is a striker. He's a pretty long, rangy guy. He's not like that great, but he was just lighting up Anderson on the feet, to be fair. Yeah, still huffing copium about that one, so we can move on to Bogdan Grad defeating Michael as well. Scrappy fight, very close fight. I did think that Grad was doing more damage, but the decision ended up going to Grad there. And I would like to see him go out there against someone like Gabriel Santos, who I think would test him kind of everywhere. It's kind of hard to match up Grad because he does have 16 pro fights with a 14-2 record, so it's not like you can just put him in there with the bottom guys, because he does have a lot more experience than some of these guys who are coming off the Contender Series with only 7 pro fights. That's where I've kind of decided to go with Grad, as him versus Gabriel Santos. Marco Tulio fought Mateo Duclos like he owed him money. Went out there like an absolute maniac and was trying to scrap. And I think that if you're going to go out there like an absolute maniac, go out there against someone else that's going to bring the heat. And I think Marco Tulio versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan would be a ridiculous fight, because Marco Tulio went out there against Duclos so aggressive. Al Hassan can grapple, even though you don't see much of it. He can strike, and he's got a lot of power, so I think it would be a fun fight. Really, honestly, just a good test in general for Marco Tulio. And then Malcolm Wellmaker looked great against Brumhald, knocked him out in the first round. Looked really good. And I have him making his debut against Simon Oliveira, who I believe is 0-2 in the UFC. I think his record's 18-4. He's just super one-dimensional, only has grappling. I think Wellmaker would look good in that matchup, and it would just be a good debut for Wellmaker to get going. Nick Piccinini defeated Jack Duffy. Hot take, I thought he did win the decision based on the second and third round. I know everyone's trying to call damage on that one. I thought Piccinini did the most damage in round 3 because he rocked Jack Duffy. He had Jack Duffy visibly hurt in the third round. Anyways, I've argued too much about that one with other people. Week number 4. The winner was Xiang Qiang Ko. I picked him as a massive underdog. Probably the biggest underdog that I picked correctly, I would say, of the season. Closed plus 240. He defeated Igor Cavalcanti. Both guys didn't look that good. I actually have Qiang Ko debuting against Nikolai Veretennikov, which would be a tough fight for Qiang Ko. But I think that he probably could try and mix in the wrestling. I mean, that's just a tough debut, but that's what I've gone with there. Now we have Jordan Santos. He defeated Will Curry. He's a boxer with pretty good takedown defense. I have him fighting against Robert Burchik because it would be another striking fight, and it would just test how good Santos' striking is. Austin Bashi defeated Dorian Ramos at 145 pounds, short notice replacement for Ramos. I would love to see Austin Bashi versus Tommy McMillan, but maybe we're not going to get that fight. I still say this. I have talked to a couple of people about this, and apparently Bashi can't make 135 pounds. I don't really understand why. I feel like if Austin Bashi went to the UFC PI, this guy could make 135 pretty easily. He's not a big featherweight. He's a tiny featherweight. And he's made 135 in the past. I have him debuting at 135 against Pedro Falcao, who actually stepped up on short notice recently and gave um, someone a pretty tough fight who's I know his face, but his name has slipped my mind. Pedro Falcao is a very good wrestler grappler. It would test Bashi's wrestling and grappling, but I think it would showcase his striking, which I think would be most important for him. Uniesi DeBen knocked out Shannon Clark. No one saw that one coming, I can tell you that much. And I have her fighting for all the violence against Carly Judas. I think that's the fight that makes sense. I think Judas is like 3-2 as a pro, and I do think that she would beat DeBen, but it would be violent. It would be crazy. That would be a nuts fight. You have to put that on the prelims of a pay-per-view. And then Quillen Selkill defeated Gage Young. A decent performance, a scrappy performance, a lot of grappling, a lot of volume. I want him to debut in Australia as well against Rong Zhu, who probably wouldn't have to travel too far because he trains at the PI in Shanghai in China. That's what I would do there. Contender Series week number 5. Navajo Sterling defeated Philip Latu. Looked really good, I thought. And he has his debut already booked now against Tuko Tokos. I believe that's in Macau and on the Chinese card as well, so that should be pretty good. Not too far of a flight for him. And I do think that he does beat Tuko Tokos, and then after that, I mean, I think Navajo Sterling is probably one of the better prospects of the season. I will make a separate video on that, on who I think's gonna like go the furthest and stuff. But for now, this is what I'm gonna do for my recap. Yusuri Belgari defeated Tiger Iwasaki. A lot of eye pokes, a lot of fouls. Belgari, I want to see him in the UFC. He's a light heavyweight. He's not a middleweight. He's a light heavyweight. Josias Musasa defeated Otari Tanzaluvi. Close decision. The right guy probably did win, even though I was very sad about Otar Tanzalov losing. I don't know how I feel about Musasa though, man, because this guy really only has boxing. He doesn't have anything else. But what I do like is the fact that he is going to throw down and scrap, and I think that him versus Angel Pacheco would just be a banger. I think that would be great, so that's what I want to see happen. I think it would be a scrap. I don't know how far Josias Musasa can go, though, in the UFC, but I think that he will be putting on some very fun performances while he is in the promotion. Now, Nicole Cagliari fought against Corinne Laframboise. Just a terrible pick from me. I mean, there was no recent tape on Cagliari, so I will just huff more copium on this one, to be fair. Yeah, I didn't see it coming. She is now actually officially booked against Ernesta Karakaite, and I think she does absolutely destroy Ernesta Karakaite. Week number 6 was a pretty good one for me. No, it wasn't. I went 3-2 on this week. Anyway, I had 2 perfect cards for the season. This was not one of them. Elijah Smith defeated Aaron Toe. A lot of people were on Toe. Elijah Smith. I picked Elijah Smith, by the way, to the disappointment of a lot of New Zealanders, but he was the better fighter, and he was the better fighter on the night. Aaron Toe is a flyweight. Aaron Toe, if you can make 125, please do. I think your ceiling's a lot higher there. But anyway, Elijah Smith, I think he should fight Charalampus Grigoriou. I don't think his father Gilbert Smith ever got a win in the UFC. So let's do one for the Smiths and give him Charalampus Grigoriou, who is probably the worst bantamweight on the roster. Taliesin Teixeira didn't look amazing against Arthur Lopez. I know he knocked him out in 2 minutes, but he still showed that he's a very green fighter. He's actually officially booked against Lucas Bursky, and that's not an easy fight, despite the fact that Teixeira's probably going to be minus 300 or something like that. Benjamin Bennett beat Joey Hart, was able to out-wrestle him. It was a close fight. I did think Bennett won, but it was close. It was very close. I would like to see Bennett back next season. He is a good prospect, and Joey Hart's a lot of fun. I would like to see him back as well. Atiba Gautier knocked out Yura Naito. Naito just couldn't get the takedowns as much as I thought he could. And Gautier, despite showing really, really terrible, like some of the worst takedown defense you've ever seen on the regional scene, somehow showed up like a D1 wrestler against Naito. More copium from me, of course. I have Gautier versus Jose Medina. Gautier hits hard. Dude, Jose Medina being in the UFC is just dangerous, man. It's just dangerous. I think Gautier would beat Medina. I think he'd knock him out. Yeah. That's the pick. Anyway, Ahmad Hassanzada defeated Dylan Mantello. I don't think Hassanzada Is that good? I mean, he did show that Mantello is even worse. I would like to see Hassan Zada fight against Anshul Jabli because I think it is actually a winnable matchup for Anshul Jabli, and I'm sure the UFC wants to get Jabli a win. Now, week number 7, Danilo Voivodkin, what was he, like plus 600, plus 420? He was wider than that. Beat Bailey Schoenfelder. Now, a lot of people clowned me for this pick, a lot. I have to say this. I wasn't confident in Schoenfelder at all. But anyway, Volvic knocked him out. I would like to see him fight against Junior Tuffer for all the violence. I think that would be an insane fight. You could do it in Australia, but I don't think you want to have too many debuting guys on that one card. So just bring Junior Tuffer back for an Apex card or something against Volvidkin. I think that would be a ridiculous fight for however long it lasts. Daniel Franza beat Vadim Kutsi. Now, this was actually a pick that I was very embarrassed about. Kutsi fought for the first time in about 2 years, and one thing I'll tell you about Kutsi, it looked like he hadn't trained for 2 years. This guy knocked out Ismail Nadiev, by the way, who's re-signed to the UFC and fighting against Bruno Silva. Kutsi gassed out in less than a round. He looked bad. He looked like he hadn't trained. Get some help, Kutsi. Get some help. I'll call the hotline for you, buddy. Now, Daniel Franza, he won. He's a good striker. He's got a lot of power. More copium. I would like to see him fight against another striker. Reese McKee versus Franza is my pick. I think that would be good. It would be a tough fight because although McKee has lost a lot of UFC fights, he is still a tough matchup. He's a tough, rangy striker. But if you wanted to give him a little bit more of a scrappy fight, I think you've got to throw Billy Goff's name in there as well. Kevin Christian beat Francisco Mazzeo. I was in a tutorial at university watching this fight, laughing at how low level this fight was. It was terrible. I think you just kind of got to use Kevin Christian to build up other prospects, and the matchup I have given Kevin Christian is Magomed Gadziasilov, because we might be able to buy Gadziasilov a finish. Now, Kevin Vallejos looked really good against Cam Teague, knocked him out in the first round, built up a bit of a name. There's a couple of matchups I would really like to see him fight. I know he's called out and been talking on Twitter to Myron Santos. No, stay away from that fight, Kevin. You're like 22 years old, buddy. We do not need to be giving you hard fights already. The UFC's coming back to Indonesia, or going to Indonesia for the first time, I think, at some point next year, and I think soon next year. Him versus Jeka Saragi would be huge on the main card there. Jeka Saragi's a superstar, and Indonesian MMA, I think, is a lot bigger than like anyone thinks it is. Whenever I've done live streams for the Road to UFC, like I have pulled a lot of viewers from Indonesia to watch those Road to UFC cards. And also the Indonesian MMA scene is kind of booming a little bit with One Pride MMA. But yeah, nonetheless, that would be a big fight, a big debut for Vallejos to really make a name for himself if he was to win, which I think he would. Or sign Luke Riley, UFC. Kevin Vallejos was meant to fight against Luke Riley. Luke Riley pulled out for visa issues. There's kind of a lot going on there. I've seen a lot of people say stuff on Twitter about Luke Riley not fighting Vallejos. Luke Riley clearly wants the fight. Vallejos clearly wants the fight. Let's do the fight. Kevin Vallejos versus Luke Riley. Guaranteed fireworks. There's bad blood there. I mean, that's like not the headlining prelim of a pay-per-view, but I think the second prelim of a pay-per-view anywhere. Just because, like, it would be guaranteed fireworks. It doesn't matter if the fans don't know who these guys are. Put them in the spotlight, and they will put on an insane fight. Like, a crazy fight. Anyway, Alexia Tainara defeated Rose Conchicao. I picked Conchicao. Conchicao just... Okay, we'll move on. I'm going to pick pick Tainara to debut against Bruna Brazil. Week number 8 took place. Dia Nogajai defeated against Bartosz Shishwich. This would have been a perfect card for me if Bartosz Shishwich just didn't get head kick KO'd out of nowhere. He was winning. Anyways, Dia Nogajai won. I'd like to see him debut against Rodolfo Bellato. A tough debut for Nogajai. I'll be honest, I think that Nogajai probably isn't like as good as what his just record suggests at 10-0. But that's a tough test for both guys, I think. Montez is a guillotine merchant. I would like to see him fight another wrestler grappler in Shayla Nurdimbeki in his debut. He defeated Carlos Calderon. Calderon quit his job for this, by the way, and lost. At the end of the day, it's the children that suffer, so I feel sorry for his children. We can move on to David Martinez fought against Xavier Franklin. It was too much too soon for Xavier Franklin, I think. However, Franklin's good. Like, Franklin is really, really good, man. And I think that if you give this guy a little bit more time, a little bit more experience, he's going to come back next season, hopefully with 2 more wins. I'd like to see him fight twice before the next season starts. He's gonna be a real problem one day, I think. But it was David Martinez fight. Martinez is legit. I'd like to see him fight another striker. Archie Lung is the matchup that I've given. So David Martinez versus Archie Lung is the matchup I've done. Torres Finney was able to get the contract. He defeated Abdullah Al-Arami with the wrestling, with the ground and pound in the first round. He looked pretty good in this matchup. I'd like to see him fight another wrestler in Dylan Budka. That's the matchup I would like to see. And Jacoby Smith, he looked good against Christian Savoy, did he not? This guy is legit. This guy's a real prospect. There's rumour of him maybe fighting at 155 pounds. I would like to see him fight at 155 if he can make the weight safely. He did look like he had put on quite a bit of weight recently, so maybe the 155 cut wouldn't be super easy. But if he can do it, then I don't have an opponent for him at 155, because I've matched him up against Adam Fugit, who I think is 2-2 in the UFC, and Fugit is just kind of a guy that people just give him, like, people fight Adam Fugit to test if they're good. He's like the Kyung Ho Kang of 170. Now we've got week 9. My goat took it home for us. This was one of my perfect cards. I think the other one was week 2. Yes, I did perfect week 2. So yes, we went perfect on week 9 and week 2. Artem Vakatov took it home for the team. He did not let us down. I knew he wasn't going to let us down. I believed in him. Now he's in a pretty tough division, because the thing about 205 is there's not that many fighters on the roster. So it's kind of tough, because, you know, there's not really that many, like, light heavyweights that are just like easy wins for my boy Artem. But I do think that a fight against Marcin Preknial would be a good test, because it's a striking fight, and Artem's a striker, even though he wrestled against Islam Masraf. I'd like to see that. I think that's the fight to do, Vakatov versus Preknial, and if he looks really good against Marcin Preknial, I think you could just fast track him against someone like Oosterdamir, which would be crazy, I know, but you could do it. Cody Steele looked good against Chasen Blair. Blair is, like, no bum. Blair's a good fighter, and he did take the fight on short notice. I'll give Blair that credit, but it was Steele's fight. Like, he looked so good, man. The hands really got it done. Takedown defense was there. I think he's a legit prospect, and I've given him a tough debut. Actually, in hindsight, this might be a bit much, but I've given him Abdul Karim Al Sawadi as his debut. Now, Abdul Karim Al Sawadi, I believe, was booked against Guram Kutatelidze. In fact, he might have fought. No, he didn't, because he fought against the guy from Tajikistan that beat Madoi. Well, okay, my brain's not working, but the point is, the matchup that I've given is Abdul Karim Al Sawadi, the guy that beat George Hardwick on the Contender Series and lost to Loic Radzhabov. That's his name, who I was looking for. Tough debut, but I think Cody Steele's legit. I do, and if he can beat Abdul Karim Al Sawadi, then this guy is going to be, like, the number 1 prospect to keep your eye out on at 155, really. And then Mario Pinto, I think this guy's a legit prospect. He went out there against Lucas Camacho. I was a little bit worried about the aggression, because Pinto has not shown to be an aggressive fighter at all. And he went out there aggressive against Lucas Camacho. And I'm telling you guys right now, Mario Pinto is the heavyweight to keep your eye out for as a prospect. I think this guy's legit. I think this guy's good. I haven't thrown him in there with a tough debut, but I am going to give him a tough stylistic matchup in Walter Walker. I think that Pinto is just so much better than Walker at striking. I think he would just knock him out pretty easily, but it's still a tough fight, because Walker's going to wrestle. So I like Pinto to do that matchup. I like that a lot. Islam Dulatov, another guy to keep your eye out on. I think a lot of people were, like, this high on him, but now I feel like a lot of people are now kind of coming down to maybe the reality that Islam Dulatov, maybe he's a little bit too crazy. Because when this guy does fight, man, he's aggressive. And he does leave himself open for some counters. And I do worry a little bit about that, but I have given him Sam Patterson, who I just don't think is going to be a match for him on the feet, but is going to test the grappling if the fight gets down to the ground. And I know that Dulatov can grapple, and I would like to see it tested at some point. Now, Sean Gilsey fought against Drilic. I thought you could give give the contract to Gelsey, but I will be honest with you guys. Gelsey fought like a very nervous fighter. Like, he was not throwing the overhand right. He wasn't really throwing any strikes. I will be honest with you guys. And he wasn't anywhere near as aggressive as he typically is. So although I do like Sean Gelsey and I do like Anthony Drilic, he didn't. He looked nervous. Like, I don't know like what happened to Gelsey. Like, maybe the moment did get to him, but he did fight like a very, very nervous fighter in round one, and Drilic was able to find a lot of success. But Gelsey eventually got the boxing going, got the body shots going. I do like Gelsey, I do like Drilic. Both of these guys will be in the UFC one day. It is inevitable. But yeah, I do think you could have given Gelsey the contract, but it was still a little bit of a performance that did leave quite a lot to be desired. Week 10 just took place. I picked 4 underdogs on this card. 3 of them won. Pretty good odds, I would say. Pretty good result. Nick Klein. I'd like to shout out Nick Klein personally. He watched the breakdown. He watched the prediction video. I said that Nick Klein needed to wrestle, and what did he do? 20 seconds into the fight, he's already got the takedown and he gets the choke in the first minutes of the fight. Nick Klein, the fight IQ was there. I couldn't believe it. I was live streaming this card. I was so happy. Shout out to Nick Klein. He watched the breakdown. Now, someone that didn't watch the breakdown was Muhammad Adu, who lost because of bad fight IQ. So, Adu didn't watch the breakdown, unfortunately, but Nick Klein did. I would like to see Nick Klein versus Zach Reese. I said that on my live stream. Someone tweeted it, so now people are going to think I copied his tweet, but it is what it is. I think that's the fight to make, Nick Klein versus Zach Reese. Both guys are pretty big middleweights in like great shape. I couldn't believe how good of shape Nick Klein was in, because if you watch his fight against Dorhan Dokai, the guy that fought Souza versus Dokai, not the same fighter. Luis Gurule defeated Piccinini. Super hot take. I thought Piccinini won the fight. And I know, here's the thing as well. Again, people are like, Artem, it's damage-based scoring. Damage trumps all. And I'm like, yes, Piccinini, did you not see the ground and pound he landed in the second round in the last 2 minutes of the fight? He was just smoking Gurule with the wrestling and landing huge ground and pound shots. Is that not damage? Nonetheless, the better fighter got the contract, and that's what I think matters the most. Gurule took this fight on 1 week's notice. Gurule is the better fighter out of the two. And I think he's good. I think Gurule's really good, man. I mean, the performance that he put against Piccinini, defending all of the takedowns, beating him up on the feet. Gurule's gonna go far in the UFC, man. I'm telling you guys, this guy is a future ranked contender, maybe even a title challenger. I'm gonna put that out there. Here's the thing. Although I actually do think he should score the fight for Piccinini, the fact that Gurule took this fight on 1 week's notice, fought 3 weeks ago as well, by the way, and what fight went four rounds, and then just come back immediately as well. Gurule's good. I'm gonna be high on him for a long time. I think you give him Ronaldo Rodriguez, because Ronaldo Rodriguez is getting all of this hype right now. He's 17-2. Fought against Ode Osborne on the main card of UFC 306. Give him Gurule, because Luis Rodriguez, he's going to lose eventually, and when he loses, you want him to lose to someone like Josh Van or Luis Gurule, like someone who you can really build up and actually have a bit of a future. Because if he just goes out there and like loses to someone like Jimmy Flick, no disrespect to Jimmy Flick, but like it's just not the same. You know what I mean? So give me Luis Gurule versus Luis Rodriguez, Ronaldo Rodriguez. He keeps changing his name. That's the fight to make. Davale defeated Antonio Monteiro in what was a war. One of the judges gave it 30-26. I don't think that round 2 was a 10-8, and I'm assuming it's the round that they gave the 10-8 to. Monteiro was fighting back in round 2. But yeah, Del Valle, surprisingly, the striking looked pretty good. Now, it didn't look great, I will be honest. He didn't look like Muhammad Ali in there, but he did look pretty good in the boxing. The grappling, I mean, he pulled the guillotine. He's a guillotine merchant. And I've given him Francis Marshall. Now, Francis Marshall, I think, would actually test him everywhere. So it is a bit of a tough one, but if you wanted to give him like an easier matchup, you could just do Conor Matthews. But I do like Del Valle. versus Francis Marshall, because I do think Marshall would test him in the striking and the wrestling and the grappling. Julieta Martinez beat Leslie Hernandez, 20 years old. I know a lot of people are saying, like, why would you have her on the Contender Series if you're not going to sign her because she's too young? If you want my opinion on it, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, me and Martinez and Vallejos manager are pretty close. We do talk quite a bit. This is what I said to him. I said to him that I agree with Dana White's analysis on this situation, because at the end of the day, Martinez did look very green. She did gas out in the second round, and you can't gas out in the second round against like UFC level competition. Like, I know like this is probably a bad example, but like Josephine Knudsen, if Martinez was gassed out against Josephine Knudsen, I know that Knudsen cannot find a finish to save her life. Knudsen's gonna hurt Martinez, man. Like, something like people like that. So I kind of just think, like, I don't mind the fact that if Martinez goes out there, I think she has a contract with Lux anyway. So she goes out there and fights for Lux a couple times, gets a couple more wins, and then goes out again for the PI, and then just gets signed straight up. I like it. There's rumor of women's atomweight, which I think I've made a video on already about who they could sign for women's atomweight, and I do think that the time is coming, because when they did women's featherweight, I mean, it is what it is. I guess it was for Cyborg and Nunez, but like, there was a lot more talent at women's atomweight, in my opinion, than there is at 145. And the thing is about 105, women's 105 pounds, there's already fighters at 115 that are probably a little bit too small for the weight class anyway. Like, I think Tisha Pennington would fight at 105 without too much problem. I'm trying to think of other examples as well. Like, there's a couple of other girls that I think could make 105. So if they do 105, Martinez is 5 foot nothing. Like Martinez is tiny, and she looked tiny against Hernandez. So I think that if they did 105, I think Martinez could be like the figurehead of that division. Like, she could be like the next star or whatever. I think that Martinez could make 105. I genuinely believe that. But anyway, Jonathan Mikalev was able to exploit the negative IQ of Muhammad Adu. Muhammad Adu, you gotta watch the breakdown. Nick Klein watched the breakdown, and he wrestled, and he won. I told Adu not to wrestle, and what did he do? He wrestled, and he lost. Mikalev, I think he's a good prospect. I would like to see him fight Yusaku Kinoshita in Australia. But if you didn't want to do that many guys debuting on the Australian card, then do Yusaku Kinoshita like kind of anywhere, to be honest with you. I don't really want to see Kinoshita in an Apex card because he's too fun, but I think that's the fight, because I do think that Mikalev could be able to take down Kinoshita, and Kinoshita was meant to fight against someone called Johnny Parsons, who's just a scrappy Muay Thai guy. That would be fun too, but I think Mikalev would be able to submit them both. That's kind of what I was thinking for that one. 33-minute video. It's a long one. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next one.